Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am bringing you my February wrap-up. So February was an interesting month. I feel like I say that every month is an interesting month, but yeah, February was an interesting month. I had a lot of really grand plans for my reading in February, and they didn't necessarily all come through, but I did do a lot of reading just in general. I read 10 books last month, and it was a really good mix of stuff. Some things I really loved. I think that there are some contenders for best books of 2020 in my February reading, and there were other books that were a little bit disappointing. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right in because I tend to be quite long-winded with these videos. But yeah, I've got some really good sci-fi and fantasy books, one horror book, or maybe kind of 1.5 horror books, some novellas. Some of these books are older, some of these books are new, and some are coming out later this year. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first book that I have, I'm not going to be doing these in order because I don't remember the order. I just kind of jumbled them up when I pulled them off the shelf. But the first book that I have to show you guys is The Wolf of Oroñaro by K.S. Veloso. This came out from Unwritten Books on the 6th of February, and I actually have a full review for this book on this channel, but I did love this. I thought it was fantastic, a really fun read, and also interesting, it is a independently published book that was picked up for traditional publishing. So this has been on my radar for a really long time. However, I wanted to wait for the traditionally published version to come out so I could read kind of the freshest and most up-to-date version. But I love this. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's a really great fantasy read, and I think this may be one of my favorites of the year so far. Then I went ahead and read a YA horror book. I couldn't resist picking this one up because I was fortunate enough to be sent a proof, and the packaging for this is just the coolest thing ever. So this is Harrow Lake by Kat Ellis. This comes out from Penguin in July in 2020. And the reason that I love this, like, that's all fine and well and good, but check this out. It's a slipcase for a book that looks like a VHS because this book follows the daughter of a kind of iconic horror filmmaker. I never get this back in its slipcase, so I'm just gonna take that off. But basically, this book follows this girl Lola. She is, as I say, the daughter of a horror filmmaker, and he is attacked in their home, and she basically has to go and live with her estranged mother's family in Harrow Lake, which happens to be the site of her father's most famous film, which is called Nightjar. And she goes to Harrow Lake and kind of expects it to be this sort of boring place, but she does want to have this connection to her mother who left when she was very young and she's never seen again. And strange things begin to happen pretty much right off the bat. There is this kind of local legend of this sort of person or creature called Mr. Jitters who comes up from the ground and, you know, snatches people away, and it's so fun. It's pretty full on. Like, right away you get thrown straight into kind of the creepiness and the horror elements, and she doesn't really kind of question the fact that these things are happening to her, which I really liked. Like, if weird shit's happening to you and you're in a horror book, I don't want you to be spending half the book being in denial. She just straight away is like, something is really wrong here. I really enjoyed this. I really loved the atmosphere. I loved the way that the author really captured kind of small town America, despite the fact that I think she's Welsh, she's not American, but she managed to capture that kind of small town kind of Midwest feeling. I loved the local legend. I loved all of the creepy things that happened to her. So there's this kind of like chattering, jittering sound that follows her. She uncovers secrets about her mother and kind of people in the town's attitude towards her mother, because she was this very beautiful young woman who starred in this film and ended up marrying the director. It's just a fascinating read. I really enjoyed it. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. When this comes out in July, I think that you guys are going to absolutely love it for your beach bag or for your holiday reading. It's just cracking good fun. I really liked this. Then I was lucky enough to actually receive an ARC from an author who I really, really adore. I have been desperately wanting to get my hands on this book for a long time. I didn't think that I would be able to because Tor.com does not necessarily send review copies to the UK very often. Fortunately, I managed to receive a copy of The Order of the Pure Moon Reflected in Water by Zen Cho from Zen herself. And I read this on the train back from Edinburgh when we were on holiday, and it's just like wonderful. It was so, so fun. I adored this book. I'm so sorry if I get this pronunciation wrong. I looked it up and I saw like 12 different pronunciations, but this is a wuxia inspired fantasy book. So basically kind of like really draws heavily from martial arts. And essentially, I don't want to give too much away, but basically a bandit walks into a coffee shop, a fight breaks out, and the story kind of explodes from there. We have poorly behaving sassy nuns, we have high-strung bandits. It's just like such a wonderfully fun book. It's a book with like a squad, with like a gang in it, and they were so much fun. They had this wonderful interaction with each other. The characters are really well fleshed out. I adored this. It's a tiny book. I mean, it's 157 pages long, so I really don't want to say very much about this until I write a full review, which will be coming up closer to the pub date in June. But this was just great fun. If you are interested in Zen's books, if you've read Sorcerer to the Crown and you really liked that banter and the really kind of light and witty writing style, I think you'll really enjoy this. It's so much fun and it just like put a smile on my face. Alright, so moving on to science fiction, I read a book that I liked, but I was really hoping to enjoy more. It's a fine book, but I was expecting it to like blow my mind because it sounded so fun. This is Chilling Effect by Valerie Valdez. This came out from Orbit Books on the 6th of February. And this is a sci-fi book, and it has a really strong opening involving psychic cats that get loose on this spaceship. And like the psychic cats are definitely really heavily sort of billed throughout the marketing. They're on the like cover of the book, you can see them, and they're in the tagline. Like, I'm gonna read a book that has psychic cats in it, basically. But I thought it was really fun. I enjoyed it, but it did have some trouble with pacing. It did have some trouble with the characters. So this book follows a character named Ava, and she is the captain of a hauling ship, and she one day discovers that her sister has been kidnapped by this kind of intergalactic kind of crime syndicate, and basically they are telling her to do pretty much all these horrible jobs in order to pay off the supposed debt that her sister has accrued by being captive. And so she has to keep this a secret from her crew, which they're very close, and she is really struggling. On the other hand, she also has a member of her crew who she is very attracted to, and obviously is very attracted to her, which is causing lots of tension between the two of them. And she happened to piss off one of the most powerful members of his species by refusing to sleep with him, and now he's basically after her, trying to kill her. So all of these things come together in this book, and it is really fun. It is really fast-paced. I really enjoyed the world. I liked how weird and wonderful the alien species were. I really enjoyed the banter. There's a lot of Spanish words that are mixed into this as well, and it was really good fun. And Ava was an amazing character, but I feel like we needed more from the others. I feel like we needed more from her crewmates because they are so incredibly close, supposedly, but I kept forgetting that like they're meant to be best friends and stuff because we only see Ava's point of view, and she's obviously so distracted throughout this book. So I will continue on with this. I am really looking forward to it. I think that she shows a lot of promise for being a really fun sci-fi and space opera writer, and this was just mad. It was mad. It was really fun. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Alright, so he is being a diva, and she's being really annoying, so we're gonna have a cat in shot for a little bit. So the next book that I read was the 5th book in a series that I have a funny relationship with. This is Come Tumbling Down by Seanan McGuire. I love the 1st and 4th book in this series. I hated the 2nd book, and I thought the 3rd book was just okay. So I had mixed emotions about reading this book, and it was just okay. And I have some concerns about this series. So this book, Come Tumbling Down, follows Jack and Jill again, and rather than being a prequel to the first book, as Down Among the Sticks and Bones is, this follows the events of the first book. This is what happens later on, and it kind of pushes the story forward, which I appreciated because that's what I wanted from Down Among the Sticks and Bones. I worry that the series is becoming a little bit stale. We're just revisiting the same goddamn characters again and again and again. And the thing that I loved about, for example, the 4th book was the fact that we got someone new. Lundy was a character in the 1st, but she was such a side character. And she got this beautiful, wonderful, fleshed out story. And I was really, really sad and disappointed that this just was kind of business as usual. And I worry that this series is getting a little bit stale. So I don't know, I don't know, there's gonna be more books in this series, and I will definitely still read them if Sophia stops hitting me in the face with her tail. And yeah, I don't know. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I think that's partially because I love the series so much, and we got a lot of characters that I do love and I wish got their own stories instead of another book about Jack and Jill. But yeah, I don't know, 3 out of 5 stars. I feel like my excitement around this series is waning a little bit. Next up, I read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. This is Tolkien's translation of the Old English, I believe, version of this poem by kind of, I don't know if he's an anonymous author, he's an unknown author. So this edition has Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is not very long, and then it also has a poem called Pearl and another poem called Sir Orfeo, which is basically Orfeo and Eurydice, but British, I guess. And I basically read this because of the trailer for The Green Knight coming out. Oh my god, I'm so excited for that film. I really wanted to know sort of what the context for the film was because I didn't know the story at all. So I am glad that I read it. I won't lie, poetry is not my jam, so I very lightly skimmed the other 2 stories in this book, but I liked Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. It was an interesting read. It made me feel like I was back at university again in one of my English literature classes. But it was good fun. I really enjoy the kind of like foundational myths in whatever culture, this one happening it to be British, and it was really good fun. I enjoyed it. Is it my favorite thing? No. Did I have a good time reading it? I think so. So I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. Then we have The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I did a reading vlog for this book, so you can go ahead and check it out. But basically, to summarize my thoughts quickly, this book was super hyped for me. I've been hearing about it for years. It's been sat on my shelf for years. I've been saving it for kind of a rainy day. And my friend Josie was just like, Justine, just read it. There's never going to be like the perfect time to pick it up. So I did, and I'm really glad that I did. I really enjoyed this. I gave this, I think, 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's not my favorite fantasy. I don't know necessarily if it's gonna make my best fantasy books ever list, but I really enjoyed it. It was very unexpected for me. The last 100 pages especially kind of whip the story around really quickly, and it kind of sets off this huge chain of events. But for the most part, this book is a very slow burn. It is a very slow moving story, but the characters are amazing, the world building is amazing, the magic is amazing. It just took me a little bit to kind of connect with it, which I felt really bad about because this book is all about women kind of dealing with their trauma and trying to survive. Our main character, one of our main characters, on the opening pages of the book, her son is murdered by her husband, the boy's father, and she like finds his body. It's dark, dark stuff, but I couldn't quite click with it initially. But once I kind of like just sat down and read a ton of it, I got there. So this was again 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. I am going to be reading hopefully the second book in March, if not March then April. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I really did. I don't think it's my favorite book ever though. Then I read a book that was very different for me. I was really craving something different and unusual, and this book caught my eye, and I'm really, really glad that I read it. This is Pine by Francine Toon. Basically, this book follows a young girl who is growing up in rural Scotland with her father. He is a single dad because her mum ran off. They have no idea where she went, but she left the family when she was very young. So basically, she's living with her dad, who's kind of a really sad man. He's an alcoholic, and they just kind of are scraping by in their existence. So one day on Halloween, they see this woman by the side of the road, and she doesn't recognize her, but she almost like casts the spell over her father. And by the time that the evening is over and this woman is gone, she asks her dad about who she was, and he has no recollection of ever seeing this woman. And this kind of becomes a theme. This woman appears and someone will interact with her and they will have no memory of her afterwards. So it's got this kind of really cool, lighter, supernatural element, but a lot of it is about growing up in a small town, about having a difficult childhood, about being bullied, and it was phenomenal. I really, really loved this book. Maybe it's partially because of the fact that it was so different from a lot of the things that I've been reading, but I just loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This is definitely one of my favorite books of the year. I don't have my copy right now because I'm actually lending it out to a friend. I've been hyping it up to so many people, and I'm hoping that many more people will read it because it was just fantastic. I adored it. Go into it knowing as little as possible. I feel like I've already said too much, and I think that you will really, really enjoy it if this sounds like it might be your cup of tea. My one audiobook read for this month was Library of the Unwritten by AJ Hackwith. This came out, I think, in the States last year, but it only just came out in the UK in February, and this was so fun. I feel like this is the perfect book for people who love Good Omens and The Unlikely Escape of Uriah Heep, which I did a review for. It's basically a book lover's romp through heaven and hell, and it was so fun. Library of the Unwritten takes place in Hell's Library, which is basically where all the unwritten stories go and are stored, which is a really bleak thought. If you are an author or a writer, every story that you have ever wanted to write and never got around to is stored in Hell's Library. So our main character is Claire, who is the head librarian of Hell's Library, and she's very stuffy, and I adored her. She was amazing. And we follow her and her assistant Brevity, who's a former muse, and a host of other characters. Basically, when a artifact is discovered and war is going to break out between heaven and hell, they have to retrieve it and they have to figure out what to do with it. And it was so, so fun. It is super witty, it is super funny, but it is also a book that really talks deeply about faith and about you know, your self-worth and how you judge yourself, and you know, kind of what your life amounts to in the end. It's really heavy, but it is really funny. So it's a really fast read. The audiobook is great. Someone recommended the audiobook to me recently on, I think, my book haul where I hauled this book. So thank you, because that was a great choice. And it was just really good fun. I would not recommend this if you take religion very seriously, because it does do that thing where kind of angels are kind of assholes and hell, and you know, all of the beings of hell are a lot more fun. So if that's something that you don't enjoy, don't pick this book up. But if you love things like Good Omens, I think that this might be a really good choice for you. This was another 4.5 star read for me. So the last book that I have to talk to you guys about is Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This is a book that takes place in 1920s Mexico and follows a girl named Cassiopeia, who is the daughter of a woman from a wealthy family who ran off with a penniless man who died, and now her and her daughter Cassiopeia have to come back to her father's household, where they're basically treated kind of like servants. And Cassiopeia is a very fiery young woman. She wants to live life to the fullest in the 1920s. She wants to drive fast cars and swim in the sea and, you know, wear shorter dresses, but she lives in this tiny town and she is treated very poorly by her family. And one day, because she's pissed off at her family, she does a thing that she knows she's not meant to do. She takes a key that her grandfather always has around his neck, and she opens this strange box at the foot of his bed. And out of this box springs the Mayan god of death. And he basically says, "My brother betrayed me and locked me away, imprisoned me. If you can help me get revenge, I will make all of your dreams come true." So she sets off with this strange man, or god, and they go basically kind of on this tour of 1920s Mexico, stopping in a variety of different towns, including places she has desperately always wanted to see. And the thing that I love about this, despite the fact that it has just incredible world building, beautiful imagery, this is basically an adult fairy tale with Mexican mythology, which is phenomenal. Cassiopeia is an incredible character. She's easily one of my new favorite fantasy heroines because not only is she like fierce and fiery and she's really stubborn and all of that, a lot of the qualities that you get in fantasy heroines, she has so much agency. And there's never a single moment in this book where she does something that she does not want to do. She does some things that are difficult and that she has reluctance to do, but she makes the decision to do everything that she does, which is important when you are, say, working for a god and have to make certain sacrifices as a mortal in order to summon, say, you know, a demigod that they need to speak to. She's amazing. I love her so much. And she, to me, is like the perfect characterization of that really strong female character in terms of will and in terms of wit. She's just amazing. I do think that this book suffered a little bit from it being a very, very slow start. I picked it up and put it down a lot until, again, kind of like the 5th season, I just sat myself down and forced myself to read it. And after about 150 pages, I finally kind of got more into it, but that was about halfway through the book. Also, I think that while Cassiopeia is a phenomenal character, a lot of soul got poured into her, but not into everyone else. There are a lot of secondary characters I think who could have been phenomenal and amazing, but they were a little bit flat, which was kind of unfortunate. I do think that this book could have stood to be a little bit longer. It's like 300 something, high end of 300 pages. And I think that fleshing out some of the other characters would have been a really, really good choice. But regardless, I did give this 4 out of 5 stars. I am very excited to read her upcoming book, Mexican Gothic, which you will see in my book haul. I think that she's a really talented writer, and I'm very, very excited to see what she comes up with next. So that is it for my February wrap-up. I, as you can see, failed my Febwitchy readathon. I had so much trouble trying to fit other things into my reading. I had a really difficult time kind of scheduling books in like you try to do with a TBR. I couldn't be convinced to read anything that I needed to read for like deadlines. I was a mess in February, and I think that my sort of arc reading schedule suffered for that. However, I did really enjoy my reading month despite it having some ups and downs. In the comments below, I would love to know if you have read any of these books, if they're in your TBR, if you've heard anything about them, but also let me know what you read in the month of February. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so go ahead and hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.